Most of us think crime is rising, yet we're told crime numbers are coming down. So how likely are we to become a victim of violent crime? What happened?
I was just bottled from behind for no reason. Looked down, there's just blood everywhere.
Why?
There's no reason.
I'm Nick Ross, and I'm on a journey to find out the truth about crime. How much crime do we even know about?
Police figures are almost hopeless when it comes to measuring violent crime.
And what can we do to stop it?
I think you can halve the number of injuries. I don't think you'll halve it in a year. I don't think you'll halve it in 5 years. I think that in a generation you might do it.
We've set up a unique experiment. We're taking one city and swamping it with cameras for a fortnight. We're filming around the clock with the police, the fire service, and at the hospital to build up a comprehensive picture of crime. And more than filming with them, we're collecting their data too. We're going to count all the crimes we find, and we're not just using the official figures. We're going to meet residents, get teenagers' perspectives, and carry out our own questionnaire to find the crime that goes unreported. Then we'll map it to reveal what crime in one city really looks like. We're calling it our crime audit. Behind the crime numbers are individual human stories. We'll be following the victims over the coming months to see how they're treated by the police, the prosecutors, and the courts. And beyond the criminal justice system, we'll see what could be done to prevent crime from happening in the first place. This could be any street in any town in any part of Britain, and that's why we've chosen it. It's typical, and its crime rate is typical too. For the most part, people here rub along pretty well, but we're out to see what happens when they don't. This is Oxford, famous as a university town, but we've chosen it because wherever you live in the country, there's a part of Oxford just like it. There are leafy suburbs, an industrial heartland, a bustling city centre, Victorian terraces, housing estates, and the city stretches out into countryside beyond. 150,000 people live here, and a further 30,000 commute in daily. Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to hear about the crimes that are likely to affect all of us at some stage in our lives: theft and antisocial behaviour. But tonight, I want to discover the truth about the crime we hear about most, and that's violence. Our first surprise comes right from the start of the audit. Hardly any violence is reported to police.
Control room.
It's now Friday, and their 999 call centre is quiet as it has been for most of the week.
At the moment, we've got 16 jobs, but some of them have already been actioned and they're waiting for me to pick them up again.
This, they say, is a typical weekday pattern. But then, as the weekend begins, in a scene repeated in towns and cities across Britain, the streets begin to flood with a new and younger crowd out to have fun in the city's clubs and bars. For the vast majority, it'll be just another night on the town. But for some, things will get out of hand. And as the evening draws in, the police arrive in force. Saturday night, there is a fantastic police presence. They're almost swamping the main streets where the pubs and clubs are, stamping out any trouble before it really gets out of hand. It's nearly midnight, and thousands have been drinking and having a good time. It's fairly quiet on the streets, but in the 999 control room, Inspector Peter Edwards and his team know it's not going to last.
The pubs are starting to empty out. Some of the clubs still have a couple of hours to go, so people are starting to drink, or have been drinking quite a lot. You can guess what's going to happen. You start to get people getting rowdy, having arguments. That will probably reach a peak, around about now, and start to drift off through the night. But, you still get incidents happening at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Violence is starting to kick off, much of it caught on police CCTV. Control room staff scan 42 locations, and as soon as they see trouble, they're getting officers to sort things out.
Hang on, she fucking whacked me out.
If we get a big fight or an assault or an incident, straight away we can have the CCTV looking at it and watching if there's any offenders leaving the scene, running away, and obviously we'll trace them.
A drunken brawl has broken out, and town centre cameras show several people throwing punches. The officers I'm with get there as fast as they can. But as we arrive, it's hard to know who's been doing what to whom. As police pursue the fleeing man through the city centre, their CCTV guides another unit towards him to cut him off.
You won't tell us his name.
Stand up.
Right.
I've done nothing wrong. I'm innocent. Keep your hands down for us. I've done nothing wrong. Keep your hands down.
It's all right, you don't get yourself worked up.
I'm worked up because I need to act like a criminal, and I'm not a criminal. I'm a teacher.
Okay.
I'm a teacher.
No problem.
I teach people how to speak English. One teacher.
Well, this is an absolute classic, isn't it? There's been a fight. The guy running away from the police. He says, the reason I'm running away is I'm a teacher, I had nothing to do with it. You were going to put me in the frame for the assault. I've got a suspicion this is one which is really quite a nasty fight, and it's not going to go anywhere. As more people leave the pubs and clubs, we see more victims of this alcohol-fueled violence. One man is unconscious on the pavement. I come across another outside the police station.
He started hitting me again. He hit me once. I looked, stop, hit me, please.
This is the reality of violence on our streets. It happens mainly to young men, and it's random. If the police aren't there when it happens, it's extremely difficult to prove who's responsible. In any case, as the night goes on, I discover the system couldn't cope if the police did find more people to arrest. I'm looking in on the custody suite at Oxford's main police station. There's already a bottleneck.
Get the video camera! Get the video camera, Remember, you may see left again!
It's just after 1 o'clock in the morning. All the custody suites here at Oxford are now full. There are 17 cells, 3 quite serious offences. A chap in there accused of raping his wife. There's someone down there assaulting a police officer. Most of the rest are the sort of things you get on a Friday night, a fray, assault, stuff like that. But the fact is, it's full, and so are the next 3 police stations away from here. So the next arrest means that the officers have got to take their suspect to Reading, that's in the next county, and that's going to mean they're off the streets for the rest of the night. The night's still young. We're alerted to another fight spotted on police CCTV. 4 men attacked 2 others, and they're tracked as they leave the scene. But now the police have got the suspects, there's no room for any more prisoners in the cells.
What are you going to do?
If we can deal with things without making an arrest, then we will do.
Just because the custody suite's full?
Because custody is full. It doesn't necessarily mean we won't arrest. It might be that we can deal with it at a later date. Obviously, if we have to start ferrying people to Abingdon and Banbury, it takes up officers' time, and then they're not out on the street.
It feels like a bit of a lottery. Your chances of being arrested seem to depend on whether you're caught early and there's room in the cells, or late, when they may have to let you go. But how much violence do the police even know about? Our 2-week audit doesn't just follow the police. We're going everywhere we can in search of crime. And in order to find victims of violence, the next thing to do is meet the doctors and nurses who pick up the pieces. This is the Accident and Emergency Department at the John Radcliffe, Oxford's world-renowned hospital which serves the whole city. We're filming around the clock here throughout our 2-week audit. Almost as soon as I arrive, I meet 18-year-old Johnny Rayfield. He was attacked at a private birthday do, and he's been brought in by his girlfriend, Lois. John, that's a pretty nasty injury. What happened?
I was at a party with my girlfriend. I was just bottled from behind for no reason. Looked down, there's just blood everywhere.
Do you know who did it, who it was?
Yeah, I know who it is.
And you've told the police who it is?
Yeah, police are aware.
Was he quite drunk?
He was definitely very drunk.
He was very drunk.
Yeah.
How often do you have to deal with injuries like this?
Well, obviously more on weekends, but we do see a lot of assaults to the face. They're mainly punches rather than bottles like this, but they do have them.
Hiya. You were there when it happened?
Yeah.
Jonathan says there was just no reason for it at all.
No reason whatsoever.
There was no argument, there was no nothing?
Happy birthday.
You just sung happy birthday? And a guy turns around and bottles him?
No worries.
What proportion of your work on a Friday, Saturday night is due to alcohol?
80–90% tonight.
80 or 90%?
I would say so, yeah, but from what I've seen.
You've had a lot of assaults in tonight, too?
About, from 6 o'clock, I think we've had about 20 assaults in.
During the early hours of the morning, we see a steady flow of walking wounded, some quite badly injured. They're men who've been drinking or who've been hit by someone who's drunk. Sister Jules Stockbridge has seen it all before. She's been a nurse here at A&E for 19 years. Every single one of the patients we've seen here who's come in as a victim of assault, it's been alcohol-related. Is that the typical pattern?
Yes, it is. You know, people lose their inhibitions. They'll say things that they wouldn't dream of saying when they're sober. And obviously, out of that escalates the violence as well. And the grim reality of ending up in an A&E department, you know, covered in blood, confused, in pain, you know, is very different than what you expected when you left to go out for the evening.
Johnny will be scarred for life. The police have arrested the party guest who bottled him, so over the coming months, we're going to follow his case through the justice system to see what happens. Meanwhile, as more and more injured arrive in A&E, I want to know what patterns there are to the violent assaults that we're seeing. Is tonight typical? And where does the violence happen? We've taken a whole year and mapped all the violence that was recorded as a crime. Each white light shows where an assault recorded by the police took place in the whole of Oxford over 12 months. And guess what? The red lights show the clubs and pubs. Most recorded assaults come from where there's the highest density of licensed premises. Alcohol is fueling violent crime. And since Oxford is typical of Britain, this is likely to be true of towns and cities everywhere. But this is just the violence the police know about. What's really struck me during our two-week audit is just how many people have been brought here into hospital as patients because they've been victims of violence, but haven't told the police, even though quite a few of them have been really quite badly injured. Tim, I know it hurts like hell to talk, is that right? Can you just very briefly tell me what happened? Was it a fight or what?
Not really, one-sided. I didn't really do anything back.
What, somebody just hit you? And if you've been told they've broken your jaw? Oh my gosh, they've actually split it there.
And straight across there as well.
So you've got two breaks in your jaw?
It's just that bit there's on its own, apparently. It's just
all loose?
Yeah.
And you can see just here where he's fractured through his jaw. His mandible.
Looks completely broken through, is it?
It's gone right through, yeah. It's quite nasty. He's also got a fracture here.
Which is also broken through. That's quite a serious injury.
It's quite a nasty one, yeah, to go completely through.
It's going to need an operation to fix.
Right. Is he going to be okay at the end of it?
Oh yeah, he'll be fine at the end of it.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty, it's a pretty standard fracture from our point of view. We see a lot of these. Put them together if you can.
Despite an injury that will keep him in hospital for days and take several months to heal, Damien tells me he has no intention of telling the police. Why do you want to get the police involved?
I don't know. He didn't really seem the sort of person that I could really see in a threat. It was like a self-defence mechanism, wasn't it? To protect him and his girlfriend, and that's all it was. I just think he's wasted my time so much, I should really waste his, I suppose. But...
What was it that started it? Somebody made a lewd comment about his girlfriend or something, is that right? Was that you? It was somebody else? And it's because people like Damien don't report their assaults to the police that we asked the John Radcliffe Hospital to provide us with the figures they collect on the victims of violent crime. On this Friday evening, 12 assaults were bad enough to be treated at A&E, yet only 7 assaults were recorded by the police in Oxford that night. So there's a mismatch. And for nurses up and down the country like Sister Jules, this is the pattern, week in, week out. Jules, you keep a tab at this hospital of injuries which are consistent with violent crime, even if the patient has not reported this as violent crime to the police. And it's surprising how many aren't reported.
Oh, yeah. They either don't want to be involved or they know who's done it to them.
Now, one would have expected it's just the very minor injuries that don't get reported to the police, but that's not what we've seen.
No, they're quite serious ones.
There's a guy in there, one of the most seriously injured we've seen. His face is a mess, he's got a black eye, but they're worried that he's got quite a bad head injury. He doesn't really want to talk to us on camera. He certainly doesn't want to have anything to do with the police. It's a classic example of a serious injury that comes into hospital not reported to the police that'll never make its way onto the crime statistics. So, how typical is this? And how much does Oxford tally with the national picture? Well, I'm on the way to Cardiff to talk to a man who knows more about this than almost anyone. He's a professor of maxillofacial surgery. In fact, he spent so long patching people's faces up after they'd been violently assaulted that he got fed up with it and started keeping meticulous records of how often it was happening. And he's persuaded lots of other hospitals to do the same. Professor Jonathan Shepherd has now been tracking British violence for a quarter of a century. So how did your figures tally with the police ones?
We found, for example, that 7 out of 8 assaults inside licensed premises which led to A&E treatment did not appear in citywide police records in Bristol and in Swansea and also in Cardiff.
So they weren't even seeing the glinting top of the iceberg. It was just almost meaningless.
Police figures are almost hopeless when it comes to measuring violent crime because police recording depends on a report, and people we found don't report violent offences because they're afraid of reprisals, because they don't know who hit them, because they don't want their own conduct scrutinised too much. There's still an awful lot of incidents which result in people having a broken jaw, a broken nose and needing a hospital operation, and great expense incurred in the NHS which are not reported or recorded.
We wanted to find out more about who the police might be missing from their figures. For one thing, we've seen almost no violence involving children. Under-16s aren't represented in any national survey on crime, at least not till now. We went back to the city to conduct one of the biggest surveys ever undertaken to find the truth about crime against young people. 1,800 14 and 15-year-olds have taken part across Oxford's state and private secondary schools. And for them, violence seems a part of normal life. The survey included middle-class kids like these, as well as those from less prosperous parts of town. All in all, nearly a third of boys and almost a fifth of girls told us they'd been kicked or punched in the previous month. Have any of you been punched or kicked or hit, beaten?
Never been beat up.
Neither, no.
None of you?
No. I have heard of a lot of fights before. I mean, just the other day, last Friday, in fact, our school was a boy from our school and a boy from the private school had a bit of a fight, and the private school boy actually ended up with a jaw broken. And this was only last Friday, and he had to go into hospital, and they video recorded it, and I find that quite sickening. This is like him stamping on his head, sort of thing. It was really, really horrible.
A third of boys and 1 in 6 girls told us they'd hurt someone else. And though some of this might be messing around, 1 in 10 confessed to carrying a weapon. So violence is routine, very real, if rarely thought of as a crime. Think of fights among your own age group.
Yeah.
You're not frightened of adults down the street attacking you?
Just down the road, there was this guy, and he came over, and my friend was taking some cash out of the bank, and he just pulled out this little kind of flick knife sort of thing, started brandishing it around. I was like, "Are you going to help me out or what? Are you going to help me out or what?" And eventually, my friend just handed over 20 quid, and was pretty shaken up by that whole thing.
To find out more about the patterns of crime in our typical British city and how they affect you, come to our website at bbc.co.uk/truth about crime and discover the truth about crime online. Meanwhile, another vivid pattern is emerging from our audit. Violence going on behind closed doors. What's interesting is the number of cases where people are ringing 999 to ask the police to sort out things that are happening in their homes. Some of these just sound like noisy arguments, but quite a few are really nasty.
The majority of your jobs that come through are domestic related.
If somebody's in distress or something and they're not able to talk, then sometimes you do get silent calls. But we're, fully trained in that. We can say, if you can't talk, tap the headset or the handset if you need any police assistance.
Domestic violence takes up a lot of police time. We've mapped all the domestic incidents where the police had to get involved. This is a whole year's worth, and it shows up some intriguing patterns. Domestic problems start over the breakfast table before the school and working day begins. Things are fairly constant through the day, building up again when people start returning home. But the real problem comes later, around pub closing time. Fights and rows then peak between midnight and 2 a.m. And dealing with it is often deeply frustrating for police.
A female called in reporting that her ex-boyfriend that she just split up with is hammering on her door trying to get in. So she's locked herself in the bathroom at the moment because she doesn't want to go near him.
By the time police arrive, the man has gone, and the woman refuses to tell them who he is.
Very disappointing.
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing. She's a bit reluctant to make any form of complaint at the moment, which is quite often the case.
And it turns out it's not just women. The next call is from a man who says he was beaten by his wife.
What happened tonight then? You had an argument?
No, not when I came home, because yesterday she beat me, today she beat me, she hit me very badly. I said, please, don't touch me because I'm already afraid. Because she said, you tell anything to the police, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill myself. Then
the man's wife denies it all, and as is so often the case, it's highly confusing. She's eventually arrested and taken in for questioning, but no charges are brought. Remember, we've chosen Oxford because its crime patterns are typical of the rest of the country. Scenes like these are being played out up and down the length of Britain. Surprisingly, according to the British Crime Survey, the country's biggest annual report on our experiences and feelings about crime, 2 in every 5 victims of domestic abuse are men. And men or women, they often demand an emergency response.
So what's happened here? All we know to domestic, do you know anything more than that?
The only report that we've got is that it's a male that has assaulted a female at the location. When the air quietens down a bit, we might be able to get some history out of it, ask for previous details of the address, and it'll give us a bit more information to work with when we get there.
But they've classed this as a domestic assault in progress. So that's a real emergency for you. Okay.
Thames Valley Police give these call-outs the highest priority, and they help to cool things down. But it's often hard for them to take matters further.
He's gone.
He's gone.
People rarely press charges, and anyway, it's usually his word against hers.
Yes. She's struggling to explain the whole circumstances, but I think they've had some sort of argument.
Why is she struggling to explain?
Unfortunately, she's had a bit to drink, so I think obviously those two have enjoyed a few drinks, which has exacerbated the circumstances.
A lot to drink.
Quite a bit, you know, you can smell it on her breath, which is difficult trying to get the circumstances. But they've had some form of argument. He's then decided to punch her twice in the face. She's got a bit of a lump under her eye.
That's okay. Come on. Will she press charges, do you think?
She's saying so at the moment, but on speaking to her, I think she's withdrawn previous complaints against him, which may assist us this time in saying to her, look, you withdrew it once, he did it again. Let's not go down that route again.
We found domestic incidents are a matter of routine, but only a fraction make it onto official police crime statistics. During our 2-week audit, there were 103 of them recorded by the police that required their action. Of these, only just over half, 56, will be recorded officially as crimes. The rest, arguments and disputes, won't go any further. But a small number of domestic violence cases are really serious, and they're not always known to the police. So I'm heading off to a secret address to meet people who've been so badly hurt or abused that they've now gone into hiding. This refuge is the last resort for people who've fled their homes in fear. They can stay here till they're rehoused safely. 3 new cases arrive here during our audit fortnight, though only one has reported her assault to the police. Laura is one of the residents. Her ex-partner is trying to track her down.
Last night I was getting abusive texts, and I was just ignoring them.
Are you keeping those texts? Yeah. I'm going to breach my tag and come to find you. Need to talk. Another woman staying at the refuge is Jane. Her ex-partner has been charged with assault against her.
I would have had no alternative but to go and stay with a family member and live my life in absolute fear. Because he obviously knows where my family live, I'd probably be a nervous wreck.
Still frightened of him?
I'm terrified. I'm terrified because I think more recently the penny's starting to drop in my mind and I'm starting to realise the severity of how dangerous he is.
Are you going to go through with a court case?
Yes, I am. I have to. He's taken enough. He's taken more than enough from me.
Well, we'll stay in touch with Jane and with Laura, and we'll see if the criminal justice system delivers for them. What we're seeing in our audit of violent crime is that it's not strangers who are most likely to hurt us. It's people we're close to, or at least someone we know. And often, there's drink involved. But in week 2 of our audit, we discover a cluster of violent crimes that we've not encountered so far. Once again, the A&E team is in the front line.
Can you tell me what happened?
I just came out the club and I just got chunked.
Okay.
It's Thursday night, and